Something has been building beneath the surface for far longer than most people realize, and by the time this Friday arrives, many will sense that something invisible has shifted, even if they cannot explain why. Some will dismiss it as a passing mood, others will call it coincidence. But those who have been paying attention to the quiet language of their own intuition may recognize that this moment feels different from anything they have experienced throughout the month. As the moon enters Pisces on July 31st, the emotional atmosphere changes in a way that invites reflection, heightened sensitivity, and a deeper awareness of what has been unfolding within. For some people, this transition may feel subtle, but for others, it can resemble the moment when a puzzle that has remained incomplete for weeks finally reveals its missing piece. If you have found yourself wondering why your emotions have refused to settle, why your inner world has seemed louder than your external one, or why ordinary situations have carried unusual emotional weight, you may discover that this shift offers a new perspective on everything you have been experiencing. Throughout July, many people described feeling mentally stretched, emotionally vulnerable, and uncertain about what was changing inside them. Nights felt restless even after enough sleep. Familiar routines no longer provided the same comfort. Conversations seemed to uncover hidden tensions that had existed beneath the surface for much longer than anyone realized. These experiences often appeared disconnected from one another, yet together they created the feeling that an invisible process was unfolding beneath everyday life. Astrology offers one symbolic framework for understanding why so many people interpreted the month this way. Early in July, attention centered on the conjunction of Mars and Uranus in Gemini on July 4th. Symbolically, this alignment has long been associated with sudden developments, unexpected realizations, rapid mental activity, and circumstances that challenge established expectations. Rather than unfolding gradually, events connected with this symbolism often seem to arrive without warning, encouraging people to reconsider plans that once appeared stable. For many, the sensation was not simply external disruption, but internal acceleration, as though the mind refused to remain quiet while new questions demanded attention. Only a few days later, another symbolic milestone entered the picture when Neptune stationed retrograde on July 7th. In astrological interpretation, Neptune is frequently connected with dreams, imagination, spirituality, intuition, and the unseen dimensions of personal experience. When this planet appears to move backward from Earth's perspective, many astrologers describe the period as one that encourages greater honesty with oneself. Assumptions that once felt comfortable may begin to lose their certainty. Stories people have repeated about their own lives may suddenly invite deeper examination. Rather than providing immediate answers, this symbolism often reflects a gradual process of recognizing where perception and reality no longer align. That process can feel confusing because clarity rarely appears all at once. Instead, it develops through moments of uncertainty that encourage genuine self-reflection. As these symbolic themes overlapped throughout July, many people felt as though they were standing between two versions of themselves. The identity that once seemed familiar no longer fit as comfortably as before, yet whatever was emerging had not fully taken shape. Existing in that transitional space can feel emotionally demanding because it asks for patience before certainty becomes available. Looking back, experiences that seemed random or overwhelming may eventually appear connected by a larger pattern that was impossible to recognize while living through it. From this perspective, the emotional intensity of the month becomes less about punishment and more about preparation for greater understanding. Astrologers also devoted considerable attention to a remarkably uncommon planetary pattern discussed during the period between July 18th and July 22nd. During those days, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto occupied the fourth degree of their respective signs, creating a geometric arrangement known by some astrologers as the barboat basket. This configuration has been described as exceptionally rare, with comparisons often made to a similarly precise formation that appeared in 1922. whether viewed symbolically or simply as an intriguing astrological pattern. The alignment became a focal point for those exploring themes of collective transformation, long-term cycles, and the possibility that profound personal insights often emerge after periods of sustained uncertainty. Against that backdrop, the Moon's movement into Pisces on July 31st becomes for many observers less an isolated event, and more the emotional culmination of everything that has gradually unfolded throughout the month, inviting a quieter kind of clarity that can only be recognized after the noise begins to fade. To understand why this period carries such extraordinary weight, you have to look far beyond ordinary cycles and recognize that moments like this rarely emerge within a single lifetime. According to the astrological perspective presented here, the last time a planetary arrangement of this magnitude appeared with comparable precision reaches back beyond the modern era, extending past the early 20th century and ultimately toward the Renaissance. That alone suggests that what is unfolding cannot be dismissed as another routine celestial sequence. Instead, it reflects a pattern that historically accompanies profound collective transitions, periods when entire generations begin leaving one reality behind while stepping into another that has not yet fully revealed itself. Whether you realize it consciously or not, you are witnessing one of those turning points now, and, perhaps even more importantly, you are participating in it. Beginning on July 18th, Uranus formed a trine with Pluto, symbolically linking breakthrough innovation with deep structural transformation. Rather than creating immediate external answers, this alignment invited change at the foundation of life itself, encouraging old systems, familiar beliefs, and long-established patterns to loosen their grip. Then, only 2 days later, another remarkable sequence unfolded as Jupiter formed a trine with Neptune while simultaneously standing opposite Pluto. This combination created a powerful symbolic dialogue between personal expansion and collective evolution, asking every individual to balance inner freedom with broader transformation. Many people describe this period as emotionally overwhelming, mentally demanding, or physically draining, because the symbolic tension seemed impossible to ignore. Even those with little interest in astrology often sensed that something beneath ordinary life was shifting in ways they could not easily explain. The movement continued on July 21st, when Jupiter formed a sextile with Uranus, an aspect traditionally associated with unexpected opportunities, courageous decisions, and sudden openings that seemed to emerge without warning. Possibilities that once appeared permanently unavailable suddenly looked attainable. Long-delayed choices demanded immediate attention. Paths that had seemed completely closed revealed unexpected openings. Looking back on those days, some people may realize that their external circumstances changed less dramatically than their perception did. It was as though the invisible framework supporting their reality had quietly begun rearranging itself beneath the surface. Long-established timelines appeared less fixed than before, and the future seemed to contain possibilities that previously felt unimaginable. Symbolically, these planetary relationships encouraged the collective mind to embrace ideas that often appear contradictory. They invited people to remain courageous without abandoning humility, to pursue bold visions while maintaining practical wisdom, and to explore profound spiritual questions without disconnecting from everyday responsibilities. Holding such contrasting qualities at the same time places tremendous demands on the emotional and psychological system, and few people can sustain that level of internal intensity forever. This is why the arrival of Friday carries such symbolic importance within the narrative of this astrological sequence. The Moon entering Pisces represents not another isolated transit, but a shift in emotional atmosphere that offers release after prolonged pressure. It resembles the moment when tightly held tension finally begins to dissolve, and the mind discovers that it no longer needs to fight every thought or anticipate every outcome. Yet before reaching that quieter landscape, one more significant chapter unfolds. Attention turns to July 29th, a day marked by two major celestial events occurring within hours of one another. The first is the exact conjunction of the Sun and Jupiter in Leo, an alignment traditionally known as a kazimi, an ancient term describing a planet positioned within the heart of the Sun. In astrological symbolism, Jupiter's qualities of growth, confidence, generosity, creativity, and opportunity become exceptionally emphasized through this placement, suggesting that inspiration and possibility can shine with unusual intensity. Shortly afterward, approximately 2 hours later, the full moon reaches its peak in Aquarius at 6 degrees and 29 minutes. Every full moon symbolizes culmination, emotional revelation, completion, and the emergence of truths that have remained beneath awareness. This particular lunation carries additional intensity because it occurs very near Pluto in Aquarius. Symbolically, that proximity emphasizes deep psychological exposure, bringing hidden fears, outdated attachments, unresolved emotional patterns, and long-avoided realities into conscious awareness. For many people, such realizations may arrive with powerful emotional release rather than destruction. Feelings that have remained suppressed for months finally find expression. Conversations that have been postponed become unavoidable. Relationships lingering in uncertainty reveal their true direction with unmistakable clarity. Certain endings may arrive suddenly, yet those endings create space for something more authentic to emerge. Another important feature of this full moon is its supportive relationship with both Neptune and Uranus, symbolically connecting the revolutionary qualities associated with the barboat basket configuration directly with the lunar cycle itself. From this perspective, breakthroughs are presented not as meaningless accidents or random disruptions, but as moments that fit within a much larger sequence of symbolic transformation. Looking back across the entire month, every unexpected event, every emotional challenge, every restless night, every difficult realization, and every moment of uncertainty appears to converge toward a single destination. That destination arrives during the morning of July 31st, when the moon leaves Aquarius and enters Pisces at 0 degrees. According to this interpretation, the atmosphere changes almost immediately after that transition occurs. The emotional intensity that has accumulated throughout July begins to soften. The constant pressure to keep pushing, solving, deciding, and controlling gradually gives way to stillness. Mental noise fades into the background. Emotional turbulence settles with surprising speed. The experience has often been compared to leaving behind the chaos of a storm and stepping into a place of profound quiet where clarity becomes possible, not because every question has been answered, but because the mind has finally become calm enough to hear what it has been searching for all along. Everything reaches a different emotional landscape the moment the moon arrives in Pisces. Within the symbolic journey of the Zodiac, Pisces represents the final destination, the place where endings dissolve into beginnings, where visible reality gradually gives way to the invisible currents moving beneath it. It is associated with the boundless ocean of collective consciousness, the realm where intuition often speaks more clearly than logic, and where the soul recognizes truths long before the mind can explain them. After a month defined by relentless intensity, this transition carries a unique significance. Rather than adding another layer of pressure, the Pisces moon functions as a gentle release, softening the energetic residue left behind by everything July has demanded. It is as though the emotional static that has surrounded so many people finally begins to wash away, allowing the deeper lessons of the past weeks to settle naturally into both heart and mind. During this symbolic window, ordinary perception may feel subtly different. Time itself can seem less rigid, moments stretch in unusual ways, intuition grows stronger than analysis, and emotional awareness becomes remarkably refined. Many people notice that they instinctively understand the atmosphere of a place before anyone says a word, or awaken from dreams that carry unusual emotional clarity. Others encounter meaningful coincidences that arrive with such precise timing they seem impossible to dismiss. Within this interpretation, the portal is not simply a poetic image, but a period of heightened intuitive receptivity, a moment when insight is received through experience rather than explanation. The messages that arrive are rarely spoken aloud. Instead, they emerge through emotion, symbolism, recurring dreams, unexpected encounters, and an unmistakable inner certainty that quietly replaces confusion. Looking back across the month, the exhaustion, emotional fluctuations, and strange sense that reality itself felt unusually compressed begin to make more sense through this symbolic lens. Those experiences are presented not as evidence that something was broken, but as signs that an internal process had already begun. The sensitivity, the uncertainty, and the feeling of carrying invisible weight all month become part of a larger preparation, suggesting that your emotional and intuitive awareness has been adjusting itself in anticipation of this moment. Like an instrument gradually finding perfect pitch before a performance begins, your inner world has been aligning itself with something it was always meant to recognize. As the moon enters Pisces on July 31st, that preparation reaches its purpose. Yet according to this interpretation, not every zodiac sign experiences the symbolism in exactly the same way. Certain charts receive a more direct emphasis, and among them, Pisces stands at the very center of this emotional turning point. For those with Pisces as their sun, moon, or rising sign, the moon returns to the first house, the symbolic domain connected with identity, self-expression, physical presence, and personal direction. Astrologically, this conjunction places the emotional spotlight directly upon your sense of self. Throughout this month, you may have found yourself carrying emotional burdens that were never truly yours. You became the reassuring voice, the compassionate listener, the person who instinctively made room for everyone else's struggles while quietly neglecting your own. Again and again you extended understanding, patience, and emotional energy, until you eventually wondered why your own spirit felt so depleted, despite your sincere intentions. As this Piscean moon arrives, that emotional haze begins to dissolve with surprising speed. The image you hold of yourself becomes noticeably clearer, almost as though a hidden veil has been lifted without warning. The realization emerging now is remarkably simple, yet profoundly important. Compassion does not require abandoning your own boundaries. Your purpose is not to carry every burden placed before you or absorb every emotion surrounding you. Instead, you are being encouraged to rediscover your own center, standing within your spiritual identity without apology, without guilt, and without surrendering yourself in the process. There may also be a decision that has quietly followed you throughout recent weeks, one that has repeatedly returned to your thoughts because you feared the consequences it might have for other people. During this period, the answer may no longer arrive through endless analysis. Instead, it appears through unmistakable intuitive certainty, a feeling so immediate and familiar that it resembles remembering something your soul understood long before your mind accepted it. Symbolically, this represents the closing chapter of an older identity, the version of yourself that consistently reduced its own light to preserve the comfort of everyone else. In its place, another expression begins to emerge, one that is steadier, more authentic, more confident, and more deeply aligned with your own truth. As the narrative continues, attention naturally shifts toward Cancer, where another important message begins to unfold. For Cancer, the moon's entrance into Pisces creates a harmonious trine with natal placements while activating the ninth house, the symbolic field associated with higher learning, expanded perspective, philosophy, belief systems, wisdom, and long-range vision. After everything the previous weeks have demanded, this activation offers an opportunity to regain direction where uncertainty has lingered. Mercury has remained retrograde in Cancer throughout much of this period, encouraging repeated reflection, emotional review, and deep introspection. Thoughts have circled endlessly through old conversations, unresolved memories, and decisions that never seem to reach a satisfying conclusion. Even those who normally place great trust in their intuition may have found themselves questioning their own judgment, feeling mentally clouded in unfamiliar ways. The Pisces moon now begins to soften that inner fog, preparing the ground for a broader perspective that will become increasingly clear as the unfolding story continues. Everything begins to change once Mercury resumes direct motion on July 23rd. The confusion that seemed impossible to escape throughout much of the month gradually starts to loosen its grip. Yet one essential realization still remains beyond reach. That final understanding arrives on July 31st, when the moon enters Pisces and completes a process that has been unfolding beneath the surface for weeks. For Cancer, this does not feel like collecting another piece of information. It feels like suddenly seeing the entire picture from above for the very first time. Events that once appeared disconnected begin fitting together with remarkable precision. Delays that once seemed unfair reveal their hidden purpose. Emotional challenges that felt overwhelming no longer resemble obstacles, but necessary preparation. Even the retrogrades, the frustrating pauses, and the unexpected detours begin to tell the same story. None of them existed to deny your progress. Instead, they quietly positioned you exactly where you needed to stand before the next chapter could begin. This realization carries a simple but deeply transformative message. You no longer need to remain confined inside the emotional shelter you created for your own protection. Those walls once served an important purpose. They allowed you to recover when life demanded more than you could comfortably carry. They helped preserve your heart during seasons when trust felt difficult and certainty seemed impossible. Yet the symbolism of this Pisces moon suggests that the time has arrived to look beyond those familiar boundaries. A wider horizon is beginning to appear, inviting you toward experiences that expand both your understanding and your sense of purpose. That expansion may reveal itself through education, travel, spiritual exploration, evolving beliefs, or an entirely new perspective on the direction of your life. Whatever form it ultimately takes, it carries an unmistakable feeling of recognition, almost as though you are finally meeting a version of yourself that has quietly existed beneath the surface all along. Resist the temptation to analyze every possibility before taking a step. Your mind has spent weeks revisiting the same questions from every imaginable angle. Now another kind of wisdom begins to emerge, one that speaks less through constant thinking and more through quiet inner certainty. Allow your intuition to guide where logic can no longer provide complete answers. The confidence you have been searching for is no longer waiting inside endless reflection. It has already begun speaking from a much deeper place within you. As the focus shifts again, another sign finds itself standing before a profoundly different lesson. Scorpio has experienced this month as an unrelenting period of internal pressure. The exceptionally rare barboat basket configuration symbolically reached into the deepest foundations of your life, stirring long-established family dynamics, questions surrounding ambition and legacy, hidden fears connected with control, and emotional patterns that have remained buried for years. Throughout these weeks, your instinct has been to hold everything together through determination alone. That response is understandable, because perseverance has often been your greatest source of strength. Yet the moon entering Pisces on July 31st forms a harmonious trine with your natal placements while activating the fifth house, the symbolic realm associated with creativity, romance, authentic happiness, personal expression, and the joyful spirit that existed long before life taught you to become guarded. This area of life has quietly waited for your attention, while responsibility and emotional protection occupied nearly all of your energy. The message arriving now asks something that may feel surprisingly unfamiliar. It asks you to welcome genuine joy without immediately questioning whether it can be trusted. Somewhere along the way, vulnerability began to feel dangerous, and emotional openness slowly gave way to caution. It seemed easier to control every situation than to risk disappointment once again. Yet, the Piscean energy symbolically moves beyond those carefully constructed defenses with remarkable gentleness. Rather than confronting your walls directly, it flows around them until it reaches the place within you that has never stopped longing for authentic connection. For some Scorpios, this revelation may center upon love. A relationship already present in your life, or one just beginning to emerge, may suddenly carry a level of emotional certainty that feels impossible to ignore. The invitation is not to search endlessly for hidden problems or constantly test what appears before you. Instead, the symbolism encourages deeper trust, where fear once demanded endless proof. For others, the breakthrough arrives through creative inspiration. An idea, artistic vision, personal mission, or long-forgotten passion may appear with extraordinary clarity, bringing renewed enthusiasm that seems to awaken every part of your spirit at once. Whatever form the experience takes, the lesson remains remarkably consistent. Authentic strength is not measured solely by control. Lasting strength also appears through openness, emotional honesty, and the willingness to receive what life has patiently attempted to offer. The insight waiting for you has never truly disappeared. It simply required the moment when your heart became quiet enough to recognize it. As this symbolic portal reaches its fullest expression, another important truth deserves attention. The moon will not remain in Pisces indefinitely. After approximately 2.5 days, it continues its journey into Aries, where the symbolic emphasis naturally shifts from inner reception toward decisive outward movement. Yet the significance of what unfolds during the Piscean passage does not disappear simply because the transit concludes. The understanding gained during this period becomes integrated into your emotional foundation. The intuitive certainty, the peaceful release, and the unmistakable awareness that something within has fundamentally changed continue long after the moon has entered another sign. Some people may notice the difference immediately upon waking on August 1st. They may experience an unfamiliar sense of lightness, discovering that an emotional burden carried for months, perhaps even years, has quietly dissolved. The external circumstances surrounding their lives may appear largely unchanged, yet internally everything feels different, because a lingering question has finally found its answer, or an old fear has finally released its hold. Others may experience the transformation more gradually as subtle shifts ripple through the weeks ahead. Relationships begin evolving naturally. Professional direction becomes clearer. Self-perception changes with increasing confidence. Choices that once felt impossible become surprisingly straightforward. Regardless of how quickly the changes become visible, the symbolic message remains the same. Once a period of profound inner transformation has completed its work, returning completely to the previous version of yourself is no longer possible because that identity has already fulfilled its purpose. Within this astrological interpretation, July 2026 stands as one of the most symbolically significant months in well over a century. The extraordinary barboat basket configuration alone represents an exceptionally uncommon alignment, yet it unfolded alongside Mercury's direct station, Saturn's retrograde, the Sun and Jupiter cazimi, and the intensely transformative Aquarius full moon. Together, these events created a symbolic narrative centered upon dismantling outdated structures, so healthier foundations could eventually emerge. The moon's entrance into Pisces on July 31st becomes the moment when everything prepared throughout the month finally finds fertile ground. The process of breaking apart gives way to the possibility of new growth. For that reason, this period encourages careful attention to the subtle language of intuition. Record meaningful dreams upon waking. Notice recurring symbols, repeated numbers, familiar songs appearing at unexpected moments, or conversations that echo themes already present within your own thoughts. Observe the quiet signals arising from your body and the emotional clarity that begins replacing months of uncertainty. Looking back, the entire journey through July may reveal itself as preparation for this single transition. Whether one views these events symbolically or spiritually, the invitation remains the same. Pause long enough to recognize what has changed within you, because that inner transformation may ultimately become the most important part of the entire journey. Thank you for spending this time exploring these astrological themes together. If you enjoyed this discussion and would like to continue following future insights, consider subscribing for more content. I would also love to hear your own experiences and reflections, so feel free to share them in the comments. Until next time, take good care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.